It's time to start your morning by taking 5. Here's your host, Matt McMaster.
You're listening to Take 5, a quick 5-minute take on the biggest things happening in Nebraska sports. I'm your host, Matt McMaster, and today we're talking about Matt Rhule and his final press conference of the spring season. Let's get right into it. The Husker games will include 60 live plays, live football that will be occurring. Enough plays to designate it as a scrimmage under NCAA rules, so that's pretty cool. They will have a Pro Bowl-style competitions during the Husker games, so it'll be live football, a ton of fun. They got a bunch of different things that they're going to be doing for the event. So, an event that maybe people were overlooking for the last couple of weeks definitely has turned into something that maybe could be fun and that people can enjoy. So kudos to the Nebraska Athletic Department and the football department for putting that together and slightly pivoting to make it more attractive. We'll get right into some of the words that Matt Rhule said and my takes on them. First and foremost, comes out, talks about his relationship with Pat Stewart, made it very clear that Pat is an evaluator and that he's valuing his evaluation of talent, and valuing of talent is a big skill of his. But despite the fact that that's Pat's job, that Pat Stewart works under Matt Rhule. And so I think it was made very clear that, the final say and stuff lands on the head coach, which I think is a very important distinguishing thing to make very clear, hey, this is Pat Stewart's job, but Matt Rhule very much still is the one in charge. Brought up, too, that Keith Williams, who's been working on the back end of things for Nebraska football and recruiting, will be helping Stewart with evaluating high school talent, because that's not something that he's done before. So I just wanted to throw that in there, a very interesting wrinkle. But, throughout the presser, he made it very clear, and Rhule once again, not only verbally but visually through just his body language kind of showed the sentiment that, paying players in college football is not something that he is necessarily comfortable with. And more so, the new relationships that are formed in college football between coach and player because of the financial aspect of that. And, he said in his last press conference he didn't like having that relationship with players with money in the middle. And it's still very clear that, more so even in college, that he doesn't like that relationship. And, went as far as to say that when he talks to players and, said that he will talk to players at the end of spring camp of what they need to get better at, that he's not going to discuss money. Now, I have two reactions to this. My first reaction is a bit of a knee-jerk reaction. It's like, well, it sucks that this isn't what you like, but it's your job. And you have been given a very important task of leading Nebraska football back to its winning ways. And maybe this isn't the environment of college sports that you want to be involved in, but it is. And you have to evolve with that. And maybe you don't like that, but it's your job to adapt to it. At the same time, while I say that, and I believe that, there really hasn't been any indication that he is pushing back against that, because they are paying players a lot of money. They are paying their quarterback a lot of money. They did go into the transfer portal this year and pay players at premium positions a decent chunk of change. Heck, they're in the transfer portal right now trying to get another running back to be in their room. That obviously is going to cost them a little bit of cheddar. So it's just really interesting to see how he combats that and how he combats the fact that he clearly does not like the new direction of college sports. At the same time, he is moving the program in a direction where they need to go. And that is the number one thing that I've always appreciated Matt Rhule talking about, is adapting, and the fact that he has always wanted to be ahead of where college sports is going and where college football is going, and has always had his mind toward that. And seems like with the decisions that they've made and the impending rulings that have come in and the new bylaws that have been established, that they have always been adjusting to that. So I do hope, and another thing too that I think is important to recognize is that Matt Rhule has set up his operations department, and especially with Pat Stewart and his hiring, in a way where he can separate himself from those murky relationships. He can separate himself a bit, not completely, but a bit from having to discuss money with players and having that financial burden affect the relationship with players, which I think in the long run is a positive thing for Nebraska. Because I think that if a player, if money is always something that is going to be in between a player and a coach, I think it's really hard to develop that relationship. And college sports, I know we're moving toward the NFL model and toward a pro model, but still it is built so much off of relationships, especially that player-coach relationship. And so I think it's a really good thing that Matt Rhule has separated those financial conversations from his own relationships from players, not only just for his sake and his comfortability's sake, but also the player's sake. Now, is there always going to be that elephant in the room? Is there always going to be that aspect about, his relationship with players? Yes, absolutely. That's the time that we're in, and that's the difficulty and the things that he has to work through. But at the same time, he has done some of those things to separate that from him as much as he can. And so I think that's good for him. That's playing into his strengths. And I think that's playing into the players, not necessarily the players' strengths, but helping develop those relationships better, which end of the day will help the players. Went back and talked about the comment he made last week about this was the team he's been waiting for. Basically said, look, this is a team that coaches each other, and they're not afraid to coach each other. And I think that is an absolutely positive thing. I've heard a lot. My mother's a teacher. She often talks about that, students oftentimes learn the most from students. And I think that you've always heard the cliche of the sports, right, of the best-led teams or the player-led teams. And I think that, we're getting to the point now, too, with Matt Rhule, where a lot of these guys that are in this program now have been brought in by him, that have been evaluated by him, have been scouted by him, that have been recruited by him. And so this is in his third year, and it'll be more so next year when, because there still are some guys from the previous era around, but this is going to be his team. This is his team. Year one wasn't necessarily his team. Last year, there were still some key contributors that had been in the previous era. This year, it feels like this is his program. And that's a really, really important thing. And I think that when you make it your program, you make it your identity, you make it your culture, and when you have everybody who understands that and they all have their eyes on one goal, you accomplish things more so than maybe you would have accomplished before. So I think that those comments about how this team is the team that he's been waiting for, a team that can coach themselves, a team that can hold themselves accountable is a very, very positive thing for Nebraska football. Mentioned that Dylan Raiola looks a lot better in this spring than he did heading into last season, and that he's taken 10 step forwards and everything has gotten better. His movement in the pocket has been better. His command of the offense has been better. He's become a better leader, especially with the quarterbacks that are behind him. All great things. Awesome. Let's see it. Want to see it. Can't wait to see it, because at the end of the day, no matter what you want to say about the running backs, the O-line, the D-line, this season comes down to Dylan Raiola, and did he take the steps that he needed to take, and it is that incredible talent and that incredible arm that he has. Is that going to take the next step, and is he going to shine like the player we believe he can be? All right, that's been Take 5, and I've been Matt McMaster.